with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Show. That's right, we are back from the NBA All-Star break, and the NBA slate wasted no time at all, James. Monster slate here today and tomorrow. DraftKings giving us 10 games here on the main slate today to talk about. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. Fun slate to kick off the second half, even though it's not a second half. It's like the second quarter, fourth quarter, I guess, technically, we should say, on every team under 30 games remaining. So should be a fun close to the season, especially when you look at the standings, primarily in the West. The East is, all but wrapped up by the Boston Celtics. And then 2 through 6 basically matter, and then every other team it doesn't. But the West is a wild. It's going to be a wild finish. There's about, I think, 11 teams that are like vying for 10 spots. So it should be a fun finish to the season.
Yeah, 1 through 4 are separated by 3 games, and then 1 through 6 is only 6 games. So I mean,
Right.
it's definitely a far more competitive spot. No team in the Western Conference in the playoffs right now is under 500, unlike the Eastern Conference, where we have 2 teams currently in the play-in game that are going to be under 500 here in the Hawks and potentially the Bulls, depending on how this season finishes out. So once again, the West is sort of ruling the roost there in terms of always being the more competitive division, which brings us always to the conversation of like, do we just get rid of conferences at some point and just take the best teams in the league? Like, wouldn't it be more interesting to see that play out and not have to deal with the Bulls and the Hawks? Sorry, James, out there competing for playoff games. So anyways, discussion for another show. Happy to have you all in here with us. Des, my guy, happy to see you in the chat. If you guys haven't already tuned in, throw your questions in the chat. James and I more than happy to help you out here today. Toss a like and subscribe down on the channel as well. Certainly helps us with that YouTube algorithm and allows us obviously to get more visibility, and then in turn do more things with you guys here on the channel. So make sure, again, you hit that like button for us here today. James, let's talk about the top stories of the day, matchups, anything notable for you here.
In terms of news, the only thing that's really broke today, Isaiah Stewart was suspended for the next 3 games, so that pretty much solidifies minutes for the likes of Oscar Thompson and Simone Fontecchio. Today, the midday downgrade for Paolo Banchero was probably the most notable on the news front as well. So those 2 pieces of news were really the only things that have come across the wire all day. Donovan Mitchell went through shoot around, so some of the guys that were questionable going through shoot around. And then, like, in terms of game totals, I mean, Detroit, Indiana is the top of the spear, 246.5. It opened at 247.5. So that's obviously fun. Indiana is an 11.5 point favorite at home. We've talked about Detroit pretty often this year. They've been obviously the worst team in the NBA, but that's not the case when it comes to covering spreads. Now, to that extent, they've also been in undoubtedly the most double-digit spreads this year. So, they have had that luxury.
How many of those were backdoor covers, right?
Right. Backdoor covers with second units. Yeah, right. So it is an 11-point favorite there. Maybe the best game on the board. There's 2, but Phoenix, Dallas, obviously 245.5 implied total. Dallas giving 1.5 at home. We don't know the status of Bradley Beal in that game, but he went into the break with multiple injuries he was dealing with. LAC, OKC, maybe that's probably the other best game on the day in terms of, like, I want to watch this game. 235.5. OKC giving 1.5 in Gordon Hayward's debut. Charlotte, Utah, Washington, Denver, solid games to end the slate as.
Yep, slate starts tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern time, runs all the way through the 9 p.m. hour here. They took off the 10 p.m. slates as per usual here. Let's just jump into it. We will go position by position. And guys, if you have any comments, feel free to throw them in the chat. We will put them up on the screen. We'll answer those for you, DFS related, betting related. If you have some FanDuel questions, we know some of our friends out there play on FanDuel. Feel free to throw those in the chat as well. We have the updated rostership available on site there as well. So that came out just before we went live. So if you want to go check that out tonight as well to see where the field is going with their lineups today, you certainly can get a feel. There's some high ownership on some plays for this being a 10-game slate. I was a little surprised to see, but we'll cover all of that here now. Let's get into it. Point guard position, Luka Doncic is your top price play on the slate at 12-1. You have SGA below him at 10-5. Devin Booker at $9,800. Mitchell, Halliburton, Brunson, Maxey rounding out the 9K and above. What are your thoughts here on the top tier? Is Luka a must for you tonight, given the home matchup, the matchup against the Suns, and the game total here?
I mean, he's probably, if you take a look at the spend ups, like the 4 guys over 10K, him and Jokic are probably really close, 1A, 1B. Jokic is getting a lot of ownership today. I might lean Luka for lower ownership in the better overall game environment. I know Washington has been a cesspool of fantasy points to opposing centers and just opposing teams in general. But this game has 14 more implied points in it, Phoenix, Dallas. So I wouldn't say he's a must play, but he's as good as it's going to get. 80 fantasy points per game against them in 2 meetings. Obviously, both without Kyrie, but that really hasn't mattered. He's had 80 fantasy point games with Kyrie. So the one thing we know about Luka more than almost anybody else in the NBA is that he's going to play 40 minutes in a competitive game. So especially second half of the year, Dallas currently in the play-in right now. Phoenix, they leapfrog Phoenix with this win. So Luka there might be multiple games down the stretch where Luka doesn't sit. He might not sit. So this feels like a game where All-Star break, fresh body, give me Luka over pretty much everyone else if you're spending up.
Yeah, I'm with you there again. It's we're not telling you anything you guys don't already know. Obviously, Luka Doncic can play him every single night. Nikola Jokic, you can play them every single night if that's the way you want to go about your lineup builds. If you do find yourself maybe building a bit more of a fair and balanced lineup, for me, Halliburton and Brunson both made the write-up section today. You've talked a lot about Halliburton lately. You know, the pricing was just far too cheap for him over on DraftKings. It's still too cheap for him over on DraftKings. This is a guy that should be up over 10K. So what are your overall thoughts here on that spot?
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's no minutes limit, 34 minutes in back-to-back games, that's tremendous. So that's what we were looking for out of Halliburton before the break. Don't see why that would go backwards. And if anything, he was playing like high 30s, even touching 40 minutes in some instances. So I think that we're going to get a massive workload out of Halliburton here moving forward, because Indiana's in a similar spot too when it comes to the standings. They're half a game ahead of Miami and Orlando from being in the play-in game. Right. Now, I think they probably long-term, if there's no Embiid, are better than like Philadelphia. But Orlando healthy, they are a good team. Obviously, Miami could get hot. So should see full run out of Halliburton. Love him at 94 and Brunson.
Hey, he was a guy priced up over 11K at one point this year, and you're getting him at a discount because he's coming off of that injury. And Brunson's sort of the same deal here as well. Without Randall, the usage rate is pretty insane here. We know the scoring, the shot's going to be there. He fills out the stat sheet for you. So if you want to go either way, certainly can go ahead and plug in either of those two plays. When we go under $9,000 here, and Travis, I see your question. We'll talk Hayward when we get to the small forward position for this one. I don't mind going James Harden. I kind of waffled back and forth on where I want my Clippers exposure here tonight. And I kind of keep going back to James Harden just because of his ability to give you that triple-double, upside here. So Harden and Kawhi, I think, are the two Clippers, if we're looking to spend up, that I would look to lock in. But speaking specifically for point guards here in this mid-tier range, liking Harden, I know you're in on Jamal Murray. I like Cade Cunningham tonight at $7,600. And McCollum for me, do we have an update on the Brandon Ingram status here?
Nope.
If Ingram doesn't sit, I plug McCollum into that group as well.
If Ingram sits.
Yeah.
I don't think the one thing that I was looking at earlier were the McCollum minutes the last few games. I wonder if, and not to say 30 to 33 is bad, but that's obviously, could leave a little bit of meat on the bone. I feel like where you could get someone for cheaper who possibly plays more minutes than that. Like Van Vliet probably comes back and plays 40. Quickly has I think 40 minute, close to 40 minute ceiling. So that would be the only thing that would wash away if Ingram sat, as you mentioned. But I would probably.
Yeah, McCollum for me only if Ingram sits.
Okay. Everything else you mentioned, I agree with. I love Cade 76. Obviously the minutes going into the break weren't great, but in a competitive game against the Clippers, he played 35. So it's a great matchup. 2 top 7 teams in pace, 2 bottom 10 teams in defense. So I do like Cade quite a bit. I like Jamal Murray in tournaments as well. The only thing we worry about with Murray and Denver in general is the competitiveness of that game. But again, Washington, another bad team that has been awfully good at keeping games.
18-8 against the spread this year. Again, another team that is often dealing with 10+ point spread. Right. So, they were, they 17-point underdogs against Boston. Now they almost won that game.
They were winning that whole game.
But the fact that they were also 17-point underdogs shows kind of goes to show you a little bit there. When we're going under the 7K tier, you mentioned Van Vliet. My worry with Van Vliet really is sort of the matchup. I don't really like going up against the Pelicans in New Orleans. That worries me a little bit for Van Vliet here. Darius Garland was someone I went to. I know that there's going to be Donovan Mitchell active here tonight, but you're still generally getting in that 30 fantasy point range for Garland, which at 6K is your 5X. And we know if he can just get you the double-double, that's just going to multiply the fantasy points for him there. You touched upon the Clippers, and Russell Westbrook, the 2 games against the Thunder. He's played 26 minutes in both of those games, giving you 28 fantasy points. If they go small and they continue to use that sort of lineup, there's definitely some sneaky upside here for Westbrook. We know certainly has some levels of motivation potentially against his former team. And then you get the Ben Simmons, Trey Mann, and this group here in the low 5Ks. Trey Mann, super popular again here tonight. Any reason not to go back to this well for you?
No. And, we talked about it pretty extensively last night on the pod that he's running extremely good with the assists. That is unsustainable to basically convert on 90% of your assist chances. That's just, we're talking about the Charlotte Hornets, right? This isn't maybe if it was the Warriors, he's playing with prime Curry
guys that are shooting 70% from the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's a elongated luck on your side, but this is the Grant Williams led Charlotte Hornets are not the 73-9 Warriors. So I still think there's a ceiling for Trey Mann. I will say, here's something to consider, John. He only played 3 fourth quarter minutes in each of the last couple games. I don't know what that's about, but it's a little concerning considering if he's not having a good game, does he check back in? Because he has had good games and still hasn't really checked back in. So that would be my one holdup. The field's getting there. 5,500 is a good price. The matchup's obviously elite. I'm a little wishy-washy on Garland. I know I shouldn't be because the minutes limit's off.
I know that's what it is for me. I mean, if all of a sudden now we get 38 minutes out of Darius Garland tonight, that's definitely 30 fantasy points at minimum.
Yes.
So,
yes. Well,
if Paolo sits though, Orlando not as good as of a team.
Agreed. And they don't have Fultz. who obviously is good, all accounts. If Mitchell plays, Mitchell's
Correct.
getting the Suggs assignment. That's not Darius Garland. So like that's obviously another. Anthony Black is a big dude. He's 6'7", but he's a rookie. Like Garland will have his way
Yeah. And
in that
Garland's not
matchup
even
as
really
well. So like
looking for his offense, which is, obviously something to kind of take away from a little bit. He's certainly deferring a bit more to, the guys that are around him, and for good reason. I mean, they're all elite scorers. That's why his assist totals are
right.
what they are. But I definitely agree with that point as well. For me, it was more so I see minutes limit off and I see him at 5,900. I'm just like, the ceiling here,
Yeah.
it could be something certainly to pay off the price point. All of this conversation, though, just brings us to Keontae George, that is getting almost 50% of
Yes.
rostership tonight on a 10-game slate.
Yep.
I mean, I get it. The matchup, the price, his recent production, all of that adds in. He's certainly undervalued. It's Charlotte. They're home. How much of that price is just baked in
The
off of his
minutes.
recent game against the Warriors, where he went 9 of 16 from 3, right? Like,
I mean, I would say some of it, but like this has been a slow burn for the price, right? Like he's now gone for 30 fantasy points in 4 of
mhm.
his last 6 games. He's starting. We've heard it straight from Will Hardy's mouth that that's just going to be the thing moving forward. Keontae George in the start, and we've talked about it a couple times. Like the only reason he wasn't starting was he got hurt. Utah went on a crazy home stretch where they won every game. Colin Sexton was playing out of his mind.
Right.
Couldn't take him out of the starting lineup. Couldn't change anything. Then they started to lose, and they're like, "Oh wait, let's go back to what we were doing because this is like a developmental year." I agree. Like the 9 for 16 from 3 is very unlikely to happen again. But if Keontae George goes out and has another 30 plus fantasy point game at $4,700 and half the field's
Yeah.
playing, I'm like, you're dead because that's just seeming like, yeah, obviously 11-point floor was not great versus Golden State. Are they going to lose by 22 to Charlotte?
Probably not.
Unless Charlotte scores on or Trey Mann has 9 assists on 10 attempts again, then like they're not missing shots once again. But like we know how good Utah is at home. Keontae George himself has been significantly better at home this year. Like the splits are actually pretty ludicrous when it comes, and that's on par with how Utah's been in
His
general.
shooting stats,
So,
39% from 3-point range, 42% from the floor at
dude,
home this year.
it's a different
Yeah,
player. That's a different
agreed.
player.
Any other point guards for you worthy of consideration? I mean, we talked a little bit of Suggs. We mentioned Lowry on the show this morning. Nembhard's down here. Anybody that you would consider playing, or is it just at this point George just because of ownership?
I mean, it's George because of ownership. Like, I don't hate getting to Suggs. I don't hate getting to Nembhard. Salute to Kyle Lowry for making his debut, but not going to get there. It's all like all pivots off of the chalk.
Yep.
Keontae, if you want.
Shooting guard again, we have Booker, Mitchell, and Irving as your top 3 guys here. I don't mind playing Kyrie Irving tonight if you want to go in that direction. I think that Irving has shown that he can have the nice scoring ceiling in these type of matchups here. He had the 63 fantasy points against San Antonio, gave you a couple 40s, gave you a 50 against Brooklyn. So certainly in his bag. And again, he hasn't played against Phoenix yet, so we don't really have that sample size. But I can see Kyrie Irving giving you 45, 50 fantasy points tonight in a game if it's going to be 240 plus total 1-point spread. So I'm good with any of these 3 here. Mitchell might be the 3rd guy for me, just given the game environment I think we're going to see there in Orlando, but we've seen him, in games where the team didn't score 100 points, he went out and scored 50, so, certainly capable of being a highly productive play. Shooting guard was a tough position for me. I didn't really find a ton that I loved up top. There's a couple of mid-tier guys that I think a lot of people are going to maybe look towards, but like, what were your overall impressions of the shooting guard position today?
Interesting note here, John. Nicholas Batum will play, and we kind of talked about what the Sixers would do last night on the show. They are moving Kelly Oubre to the bench. Maxey, Hield, Harris. They're starting Batum and Paul
So Toby
Reed.
playing the 3
Is your starting 5. Toby playing the 3. Buddy Hield staying in the starting lineup, which I think makes sense considering how good he's been. Also, good Kelly Oubre started the year coming off the bench and was really good as the sixth man for that team. So, interesting to see how that shakes out. And DeAnthony Melton will play tomorrow for Philadelphia. So more reinforcements returning there.
None of it matters unless they get Embiid back, though. So
none of it matters unless they get Embiid. That's correct. In terms of the top tier, I largely agree with your assessment. Booker obviously stands out the most if there's no Bradley Beal, which we will learn probably significantly. 7:30 is actually a good time for that game. I'm kind of surprised to see a Dallas game at 7:30. So that's good. We'll get that early. I assume so. Thursday. Let's see schedule. I assume it's the TNT game. It is. Yep. Phoenix, Denver, Phoenix, Dallas, and then Golden State. Lakers,
that makes sense.
Which is now the main slate. Is the no LeBron, so I'm sure the NBA is super happy about that. So obviously, like Ingram may not play. It is something of note that we bring up often that Houston is significantly worse on the road. So it wouldn't be surprising to see a random BI like 50 burger if he plays. Same thing with Paul George. He has played really well against the OKC Thunder this year. Obviously, we don't know what the matchup's going to be. There's Lou Dort assignment. Sure. On the other side, there's the Jalen Williams assignment. Like both are
could be Gordon Hayward
defenders. Could yeah. I mean, that would obviously be really good for Paul George. So I do like Paul George. AK, I like the minutes in a competitive game. We saw 36 before the break. They're all in play. I think Booker would be the top dog for me if.
Bradley that's fine. If I was going into the mid-tier range, again, I think Jaylen Brown at 7,500 is a cheap price point. Anybody is viable to go off on Boston, though, as we talk all the time. It was Jaylen Brown in that last game against Chicago, though. Went for 50 fantasy points, 30 actual in that game. I put a bet in over his 20.5 points scored tonight for Jaylen, so we'll see if that one comes through. I like Brandon Miller still at 7K, definitely a GPP play. There, RJ Barrett, Buddy Hield, Dayton Ivey, like those guys in that mid tier are probably the core that I would look at.
Yeah, to the Brown point, I've seen some commentary and seen some things that suggest Caruso is going to be guarding Tatum.
Okay,
so that obviously bodes well for
giving up like 8
Brown,
inches in that matchup, but
yeah, that's like the Drew Holiday thing though. Like Drew Holiday. You'll see like Drew Holiday, Boston's ability to switch because
I watch Marcus Smart guard Giannis in a playoff game, so anything is possible.
Right.
So
right, like some dudes are just
built different,
right? Defensively, like it's just what they Smart, Caruso, Drew Holiday, like that's just what they do. Like they can defend 1 through 5. Not obviously for an entire game. I'm sure Caruso's not going to be the only defender on Jason Tatum, but
it can't be Drummond though. So.
It cannot be Drummond. Cannot be Drummond. But that does obviously bode well for Jaylen Brown. And I largely agree on everything else. Like Miller, you cannot play in cash, but hey, we know the ceiling is there for Brandon Miller. Great matchup. The Utah Jazz have actually overthrown the Chicago Bulls for most 3-pointers allowed per game by 0.1. Like Bulls are still terrible at defending the 3-point line. But Utah has now like overthrown them. So obviously that's what Brandon Miller has been really superb at over the last month or so. He has taken a lot of threes and made a lot of threes. So if he gets hot from 3-point line, like he can snowball that into a big game. RJ Barrett, steady with this Toronto team. Jaden Ivey, kind of in that same Miller boat, really high ceiling, really low floor. And like by low floor, I mean almost the lowest they could possibly be. He had 3 fantasy points in the game prior to the break. So, I think that tier is interesting. I wanted to ask because we got our ownership a little bit before, and you talked about this when it came to Keontae George. Another Utah Jazz member is getting a boatload of ownership, and it's $6,200 Colin Sexton. And again, not to say Sexton hasn't been just good for a long time, like long stretch, but like, is he the second or third highest rostered player in today's slate because he went for 35 actual in the game before break? And that's just what people remember. Is it that his price went down $200 from that. What's your take on the $6,200?
I mean, the one thing you and I have talked about is that they like eat into each other's minutes, right? So like Sexton can't have a minute ceiling if George is going to play 35, and
Clarkson
right.
playing
So
32.
and Clarkson's ability to play other positions. I don't know if we can have them both be at efficient, but maybe we can. I mean, Sexton has been a lightning rod on the offensive end this year, so this is a great matchup for all of them. Maybe I need to reconsider that. I actually don't even have Sexton in the playbook, so again, I went some other Utah plays here today. I think I actually went like every other member of their team outside of Colin Sexton here, so. Actually, I don't even think I have Clarkson. I think I just went Collins, Markin, and George. If you want to play the guards in Utah, again, it's a great matchup, and the ownership's there. I'm just kind of taking a stand on that fade of those two guys here tonight, and going more so with the front court plays. I think against Charlotte tonight, and of course George is just too cheap. So, kind of where I sat with that one. Under 6K plays. I mean. You want to throw some darts at Alec Burks? I think you can. You have the Chicago guards that are going to get a lot of minutes against Boston here tonight. Dylan Brooks has been really good, but obviously Van Vliet coming back, I think probably has a little bit of an impact on him here. If Bradley Beal gets ruled out, you're going to have to take a look at Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon as two guys that will step in and play a bigger role on that team. Was it Bradley Beal being out the game where Allen had like 14 assists or something like that out of nowhere, right? So I'm just live betting his assist props. It's sending to him like, dude, I don't know. They just keep bumping it up 1.5. I'm just gonna keep betting it. So I mean that's kind of where I'm sitting with this. Ben Mathurin, though, is also getting a lot of rostership.
Yes.
Talk about a dude that has broken hearts this year. I mean, are you buying into Ben Mathurin tonight at the ownership here?
So I think this is an interesting talking point. Jalen Smith was ruled in not too long ago. Right. So what we know is Nesmith out, Smith in.
Yeah.
And everything else is status quo, right? Everyone else is healthy for Indiana. Halliburton, Siakam, Turner, Nembhard, right? Those are the four definite starters. The fifth starter is where I think the field expects it to be Ben Mathurin, right? Because you're not playing a 40% Ben Mathurin if Rick Carlisle, the mad scientist, is bringing him off the bench. Like, you're not. That's the absurd.
Outrage on Twitter tonight when McBuckets plays 34 minutes and Mathurin plays 22. I'm gonna live for it.
So that is like the 30 minutes that McDermott plays, or he played 15 second half minutes in that game where he just plays the whole second half. He didn't have Mathurin there, right. No Jalen Smith, right? Like both those guys were out. So like, you have to assume, maybe this is not smart of me, but like Mathurin coming off a great weekend, Rising Stars Challenge champion. They won the little skills. Did they win the skills?
I don't even remember.
Pacers? No, they finished second. Finished second in the skills. Looked good. Like the knee injury that was bothering him, obviously not an issue. He's playing in all these competitions. My assumption is he starts. That would be my guess, that they start Mathurin at the 3 and they kind of do a small ball lineup. They could also go big and they do Toppin, Siakam, or they do Smith, Siakam, and there's a bunch of different routes they can go. I think the most sense that would be Mathurin. If he starts 4,500, I'm playing him. I'm going to eat chalk with George. I'm going to eat chalk with Mathurin.
There's three $4,500 players that we're going to be playing tonight if that ends up being the case. So
correct. And there's also there's a healthy amount of spend ups that we can get to as well. I mean, dude, he's shooting guard, small forward. He has a great matchup. Like, we've seen him in blowouts as well. There's a lot of things that can go right for Ben Mathurin tonight with Nesmith off the floor. The wing room that they used to have is kind of different, right? Since like trading Bruce Brown and now Nesmith is out, like they don't have as much on the wing as they used to. So I'm eating Mathurin chalk at 45 for sure, and just kind of, especially if he's starting.
Yeah, again, we know what the scoring upside can be. I mean, we saw it right here. The dude is an electric factory. Why are they doing with Mathurin that they did with Chris Duarte, right? Where they just like had these rookies They went out there, they
Don't do
scored,
that,
and then
John.
all of a sudden, like Carlisle just didn't play him. You're just like, you know what? You're done.
Don't
What is it? What is it?
don't put that into the air. Don't you dare, Ricky Bobby. Don't put the devil in this guy, Ricky Bobby.
Prince, $5,000 FanDuel play for you, sir. I will grab that one for you in a second. Just hang on for a moment. Any other shooting guards that you like here? You ready to move on over to small forward?
I think that's a is Matherin okay at 5K question. I think that came in during
Then yes, you can definitely play Matherin at 5K.
Yeah, he's 5K. Dude, he's 63% projected on FanDuel. He's the highest by like a mile.
Your value plays, I think, over there tonight. What's Grant Williams on FanDuel? I should know that, but I don't. Grant Williams.
53, I think.
Yeah, 54. So I think your two like better values 54. Over on FanDuel tonight. You're going to see Grant Williams. You're going to see Ben Matherin. Keontae George is like 58. I think all those three are the ones we're going to be going for here tonight. Dez, I do like Buddy Hield. I wrote him up today in the playbook. Again, what we've seen out of Buddy Hield lately, and I guess maybe it even helps him a bit to have Kelly Oubre out of that starting lineup. Because Batum is not someone that's going to be looking for the offense. Like Oubre would be. Maybe Batum's a bit more of a facilitator. So maybe we don't get 10 assists out of Buddy Hield in this game, but his ability to fill the stat sheet up, and I'm scrolling like an idiot trying to figure out where his price point is. Here it is.
67.
I mean, these assist numbers have been great. It's good to see him rebounding, knocking down all the shots. Like, I think the scoring is legit. I think he scores 20 plus points tonight. I just worry that I don't know if he's going to keep giving you these assist numbers. If he does, then yeah, sure, 6,700 is too cheap. But this has never been his game. He's never been that. He's never profiled. There was a time briefly when he went after the trade from Sacramento where he was rebounding the ball pretty well. He was giving you like 5 or 6 rebounds a night when he first went to Indiana. So maybe that comes through. But I don't know. I like him a lot. I do think there's some upside. The Knicks, they're not as great of a defensive team as they had been in the past. I'm fine going Buddy Hield if you want to get there.
You want to hear something, John? You want to hear about another guy just absolutely maximizing the upwards limit of potential assists? Buddy Hield's potential assists the last 4 games. Take a guess what he potential assists per game over his last 4 sits at.
Per game?
Per game. Yep.
7.
7, which means he's converting
almost
on 100% of his. So, like, obviously not going to not sustainable. Maybe it's like, I mean, even 4 or 5 would be fine. That's still above his season average. But like, that's just running incredibly high.
We need to just get Orlando. Banchero is playing tonight. Gary Harris is starting tonight as well. So
we've seen that. I think that was a talking point. Would they do a Jonathan Isaac?
I think if Banchero was out, we might have gotten Jonathan Isaac in starting.
Agreed.
Anthony Hield's not nearly a poor man's Maxey. They just have 2 completely different skill sets. Maxey's a ball dominant guard, drives to the lane. Buddy Hield's a guy that kind of is your perimeter guy. He catches and shoots, stands in the corner. Good offense there though. And I'm fine going on Donovan Mitchell. Again, I don't love the pace of that game. I like it now more a little bit from a competitive standpoint that Banchero is in. Because if they were out without Banchero tonight, they were missing a guy that's scoring 20 plus a night. And I think they'll struggle anyways going up against Mobley, who's a defensive player of the year candidate year in, year out when he is a healthy player, and Jared Allen being down there. I think this is going to be a low scoring game tonight. So I'm not really in on Mitchell. I'd rather go play Booker or Kyrie Irving tonight. But if you get to him, certainly can do that for sure. Any other shooting guards that we haven't talked about yet?
Nothing. Some ownership coming in Matherin or Nembhard. We talked about such a point guard.
All right, small forward. Again, dual positional eligibility for a lot of these guys. Tatum, Bridges, Barnes, Leonard at 87, Siakam, Markkanen, and George are your 8K and above tier. I like Kawhi at 87. Now you mentioned you think he gets Lou Dort defense potentially in this game here. Tatum's always capable of popping off. Bridges, a guy that has been going off lately. I mean, 50, 45, 68. It's a good spot for him. Went for 50 in this matchup earlier this year. Takes threes. If you want to get there, I think you can't really go wrong where you drop your anchor.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of above 8K is in play. I mean, Tatum obviously has an elite ceiling as high as anyone on the slate. Bridges, a lot of volume everywhere. Shots, rebounds, assists, peripherals, scoring. He's just a high volume fantasy player. Best player in the league, Scotty Barnes, coming off, I can't believe how great of an all-star he was. Or wasn't, should have been. Darko, I think that's all Darko talked about. How was he an all-star? Did he get he got invited in. So all Darko could talk about was Scotty Barnes being an all-star, best player, face of the league. Kawhi, I do think he gets the Lou Dort assignment. I mean, Kawhi's been peak Kawhi for like the last few months. So I think everything still funnels through Kawhi. Don't love the Lou Dort matchup, but sometimes, we talk about it. Individuals just can be better than what happens. It doesn't matter what defensive matchup they have, because if Kawhi is just in robot Kawhi mode,
Kawhi has one of the goated videos of all time when he checks into the game and LeBron James looks over and is like, son of a gun, here we go, right? And in the NBA Finals, he's like, anytime you make LeBron James shake your head, you're an elite defender there. So
agreed. Siakam is interesting. I obviously, like, the fit has looked pretty good. We haven't seen him and Halliburton enough.
And who's defending him now?
Given
obviously Stewart isn't a great defender anyways, but he's suspended. So like, who?
Yeah. It's one of the Fontecchio or Asor.
Well, Stewart's suspended, right? So it's gonna be Fontecchio. Asor. So super foul happy. Asor Thompson tonight. Mike Muscala. Like, what's on? Who's stopping Pascal Siakam tonight? Right? Like,
I assume they start Simone there, but and then Thompson mixed in. But good luck to both. And then same thing. What's Charlotte going to do against Lauri Markkanen? I mean, they don't have they could put Draymond Green like Grant Williams on him, but
they'll give him Bridges, right? Or Miller probably, I guess. But that's what I said. Yep. They don't have a 7-footer on the wing that can defend. So,
and that's bad for. Miller is super foul happy as a young player. That is not a.
Good, he'll cook Markkanen on the other side of the floor. So.
Correct. Well, if he's out of foul trouble, that he has to stay out of foul trouble to do that. I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, for sure. Again, Markkanen covered the playbook today. I know we've talked about it. He's had some down games in between some big games. So he went for 50 fantasy points in this game matchup earlier this season. And we talked about just a different team now that they got out there on the floor. Where are you with Toby? We didn't really touch on him on small forward. Do you like him more tonight now? Sort of given what that team is going to be looking like?
It's hard to accrue stats when it's almost like I don't want to compare Buddy Hield to Joel Embiid. I'm not going to do that. But also Buddy Hield's 22 and 6, 22 and 7 every night, right? And Tyrese Maxey is doing what Tyrese Maxey. Where are the stats coming for Toby? This is another situation where Buddy Hield is pushing Toby to a third role again. Toby's dude, I swear I thought that I would actually be the second guy here, and now suddenly I'm not, because hey, look, this Buddy Hield guy is here and he's balling out. So I'm kind of indifferent at 7,900. It's not the best matchup overall, and they've only shared 76 minutes together, John. Tobias Harris with Buddy Hield, okay? 19% usage rate, 0.8 fantasy points per minute. those are objectively bad numbers for a guy who's
So
8K.
update from Thibodeau. Isaiah Hartenstein will have a minutes guideline if he plays.
Okay.
I would kind of like to know if
Okay,
Isaiah Hartenstein was
so-
going to play or not, because I would just plug Precious Achiuwa into my lineups here tonight.
Okay. If he plays is definitely a very
He'll be on a
interesting
guideline
phrase.
if he plays.
I mean, dude, this is an aggravated
Mhm.
Achilles injury that will like rupture if it gets any worse, right? Like
We've seen it,
I
right? We've
mean,
seen guys hurt and tear their Achilles. So
the Durant. I mean, most famously, the Durant coming
Yeah.
back in the postseason with the calf injury, right? Like calf directly leading to
Yep.
Achilles. Usually, he's cleared by all these. Like it's like a sketchy clearing, and then he comes back and he ruptures his Achilles, and he's like one of the only people to ever return to complete form. But
Yeah.
that's salute to Kevin Durant for that. But like, definitely agree. I would like to think the knowledge of what if he doesn't play. We're at small forward. Does that like boost anything for you here? Like Josh Hart. We haven't talked about DiVincenzo.
my problem is that they're getting Bojan and Burks back,
Right,
right? So
right.
like, for me, it would just solidify the minutes for Achiuwa, right? You know, you're gonna just lock him in for 40 and get like 20 rebounds. Dez, obviously, the LA game not on the main slate here tonight, but yeah, Hachimura coming off like we have like 35 or something like that actual points the last time he was out there. So
yeah, he made a lot of shots.
yeah, you can definitely play Hachimura tonight in Showdown or 2-game slate, whatever you got going on there in the late night window. Other mid-tier guys here, I mean, DeRozan 76. We talked Jaylen Brown a little bit. Where are you at like Brooklyn guys? We didn't touch on Cam Thomas too much. Mikal Bridges is here. Do you like anybody in Brooklyn with the new head coach going against Toronto?
Yeah, they just said same starting lineup. So Simmons, Thomas, Bridges, Finney-Smith, Claxton is the starting lineup. Kevin Ollie also said he'll be mindful of Nets on minutes restrictions. So Finney-Smith and Simmons were the two guys on restrictions.
Sure.
So if you want to get to Nets, you can. It's a great spot. We've talked about it a bunch since the OG and Siakam trades. They've been terrible defensively, Toronto, and they've also played really fast. So we know there's guys with ceilings. We know Bridges. Also interesting, that's Cam Thomas off the bench, or Cam Johnson off the bench, rather.
Yeah.
For Finney-Smith. So that's, I guess,
give him a little more defense. That's basically
a little more defense. Yeah, for sure. We know Bridges has a ceiling. We know Cam Thomas has a ceiling. Ben Simmons is priced better than all of them. If you want to get there, obviously, Ollie's saying that the minutes limit, he'll be mindful of it. 24 on Simmons before the break. If you want to play any of them, there's a ceiling, especially Bridges and Thomas, but nothing more than GPP plays in my eyes.
Sure. Under 6K plays or under 7K plays. I mean, some of them we've talked about. You have Michael Porter Jr. here. Got Utah Clarkson. Gordon Hayward is 5,400. We had a question earlier today from Travis. Thoughts on Hayward, projections of minutes. You obviously do the projections for us over at Fantasy Alarm. Where do you have Hayward slotted in here, and what do we expect out of him tonight?
I gave him 24 minutes as kind of like a base projection. Sure. We know Dagnall plays a lot of guys, right? Like he plays a boatload of players. There's also the caveat back-to-back for OKC, right? Like we have a back-to-back front leg, so Hayward's going to play. My assumption is he sits tomorrow. If he's going to sit out for that long, 2 months, not in action, maybe he doesn't. You said it last night, like you don't even think the injury. There was a calf injury that probably healed a while ago that he was just like, yeah, just trade me.
That's how I felt like about it, because he is an often injury-prone veteran. Charlotte definitely wanted to move him. Yep. He was sort of like going through workouts for a bit there, and then he was never really closer to getting into actual game action. And then they traded him, and then hey, All-Star break, he's ready to go. So, which I imagine they just used that time after the deadline to get him acclimated to the team and the playbook and maybe some conditioning, and we'll see. We'll see how quickly his role evolves here with the Thunder. But nobody I'm plugging in tonight. Oscar Thompson is at least a little interesting because we know what he can be. Scoring's been better lately. We know he can generally rebound and give you some defense, but the fouls are gonna be a problem, I think, for him tonight going up against Siakam. So, keep that at least in mind. You have Murphy if there is no Ingram tonight. You have Whitmore down here coming off of his injury. Powell's at 46. Fontecchio. We like Kispert is a guy that's been playing minutes and knocking down a bunch of shots. Anybody else down here at small forward for you?
Yeah, I mean, if there's no Ingram, Herb too at 4,600. Murphy will start, but like if Murphy starts, that obviously bodes well for Herb not losing out on Murphy minutes too. So both those guys. I do have one interesting thought on Phoenix tonight.
Okay.
If there's no Bradley Beal, and even if there is Bradley Beal, I could see a scenario where Royce O'Neal plays like over Eric Gordon a lot because they could play Royce O'Neal on Luka. I think I've said it since the deadline. O'Neal was brought over, one of the more underrated trade deadline pieces, I think, acquired, because Phoenix obviously needed depth, but he's an elite on-ball defender who's actually been pretty good shooting this year. 37% from three, I think, is you're more than okay with. And we saw it, like, he played the 11 minutes in the debut, and then Beal got hurt in that Sacramento game, and he played 30 minutes and closed 32 fantasy points. Then Devin Booker gets ejected 24 minutes in kind of a blowout scenario that they didn't really play anyone, extend anyone too much. So, and he still had 9, 7, 3, 2 steals, like doing exactly what he was brought over. Made threes, played defense.
Yep.
$4,100. And again, I think that you're gonna see a lot of Royce O'Neal on Luka Doncic tonight. And we've also seen it where Nurk is getting just taken off the floor. And that's something that you and I talked about, right? Like I was very adamant. I thought that they would go to the Durant 5 lineups and like experiment with that a lot, because that's something that not a lot of teams can deal with in the playoffs. Like if they played Minnesota, what is Rudy Gobert going to do against Kevin Durant at the 5? Or what is like insert big man, what Anthony Davis guarding? Like it's just going to be a problem. So, and I think O'Neal helps that. $4,100. I'm thinking we get a pretty good Royce O'Neal game tonight.
Okay. Moving on over to the did I do power forward already?
No, we're on power forward. Yep.
We're on right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, can't tell. These dual positional eligibility guys, man, it throws me off. Durant is 10K power forward only. Here. I do love some Kevin Durant here tonight. Again, a lot of these guys we've already discussed. So you go Durant, you go down to Zion at $7,800. Really good production for the price, especially if there's no Ingram tonight against Houston here. Jalen Williams, Evan Mobley, 67. I'm a big fan of Evan Mobley here tonight at that price. John Collins is down here at 62. So among the guys we haven't discussed already, those are 3 targets for me.
Agreed. Durant at 10K obviously becomes top tier if Beal sits. He's a fine play with or without Bradley Beal. Same thing goes for Devin Booker. The only one you didn't mention in that tier was Banchero, not going to get there, 8,400 against Cleveland. Zion and the ball handling stuff has been amazing. The minutes have been amazing for Zion, more importantly than anything. And we're also getting, a matchup against a Houston team on the road who they can't stop anyone. Zion, 42 fantasy points as Toronto Dave drops his daily alarm into the chat. And shout out to everyone for tuning in for the second half of the year. Please drop the old thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you don't already as well. Love Zion here at 78. And the third player you mentioned was Mobley. The field's caught on to the Mobley thing. I'm expecting the minutes to go up. I would say we probably get like mid 30s as opposed to like upper 30s. But like if it's a really competitive game, maybe he pushes 36, 37. Either way, we were getting 40 plus, nearly 50 fantasy points in like mid 20s minutes. So, guy has infinitely higher ceiling. And I think what's made Mobley like even better, John, he's come back and he's shooting threes. Like he did not shoot threes prior to the injury. I mean, you can count them on like 2 hands before his injury, how many threes he took. And now we've had 3 multi-3 games in his last 5. Like that's just an expanded version. He should be shooting threes. He's a 4 with a beautiful shot. Like, he has great form. Like, he should be stretching the floor. So that's just another added layer to the Evan Mobley experience that we're going to continue to see. And one day you're going to be like, holy smokes, he's shooting what from three this year?
Yeah.
Love Mobley at 67.
Yep. You do have Collins again down here at $6,200. I think that's a great spot for him,
Yep.
Especially if Charlotte decides to go smaller. Like, Collins will match up great there in that spot. He's already playing, 28, 30 minutes as it is. He's giving you double-doubles. So I think we can lock in some John Collins in a lot of lineups here tonight. I feel pretty confident with it. If we're going under 5K for some value, we've highlighted it a lot on the show, but Grant Williams getting some rostership love and a guy that you and I are, we're just going to play. I mean, if he's going to be playing like this, then he's far too inexpensive.
Dude, he's closed every game. He's closed every game with Charlotte, all 3 games. And the one thing I was looking at today that I just didn't expect to ever see with Grant Williams was his 3 games with the team, 20% usage rate, 26% usage rate, 21% usage rate. That is not Grant Williams-esque. Not something that we normally see out of him.
Right.
He is a very low usage player, but that is not the case. It's just not the case with this team. So if he's going to continue to be this good, he's averaging 10 rebound opportunities per game, which he's only hit once. And he's a good passer as well. I talked about it a little bit ago. Utah allows the most 3-pointers. He's a guy who can space the floor as well. There's a lot to like about Grant Williams at $4,500 tonight. Like, I know we have a preconception. You've said this a lot to me in the past, and I haven't always listened. It's like when people change roles, or like when you cover a player's face and just be like, look at these numbers for $4,500, you'd be like, hell yeah, I'm playing that.
Yeah.
And then you uncover it, you're like, Grant Williams, like, ooh, I'm not playing Grant Williams. Well, like, that needs to happen. He's on a new team, a bad team that he's never been on, because he's been on a team with 2 stars everywhere he's gone. He's on a bad team without their best player, and he's playing all the minutes. He's taking more shots than we've ever seen. And if that's just going to be the role for Grant Williams, that's just going to be the role for Grant Williams. And like, whether he's starting or not, he's closing. And
he's basically just replaced PJ Washington's role, right?
Right. That's true. That's a great idea.
And Washington played 30 minutes. He took 10 plus shots, and Grant Williams is now doing those things. So yeah, I think you got to plug him in. Again, there are some pivots around here. There is Fontecchio. We do like Kelly Olynyk as well tonight at $4,700 here. So definitely a couple of spots you can go if you wanted to move off of Grant Williams or play with Grant Williams here. Let's get to the center spot and then build a lineup. I'm on SiriusXM here tonight. You can catch me with Howard and Jim Bowden at 620. So after our show, go tune over to SiriusXM. They can give out some plays and bets for tonight's slate. Center Jokic 11-6. Anthony wants to know, is Luka a must play? He's as much of a must play as Nikola Jokic is a must play. If you want to spend all the way up on these 2 guys, you certainly can.
Yep, agreed. Nothing else to really add. The only thing I'll say is when you're talking about like the top priced plays, Jokic ownership. We just got an update. Jokic ownership is 19%. He's one of the highest roster players. Luka is 8%. So like, there's obvious leverage playing Luka.
Yeah, big leverage on the Luka play for sure. Once we move our way down, it's always a what do we trust with Alperen Sengun here, because he's had 3 games against the Pelicans. 2 of them, he was a monster. Yep. The most recent one, he was not. They're on the road, which is, again, been a tougher spot for the Rockets this year.
Yep.
Are you buying or selling? Are we not Brian, or whatever you were doing with Alperen Sengun here?
You're trying to steal my bet live on air. This is great. I'm probably indifferent. Like, I'm very impartial to Alperen Sengun. So like, if you want to play him, play him. Sengun's a guy who can break a slate. He did it against the Pelicans already. This is the healthiest that the Rockets have been in a while, right? Van Vliet back, Whitmore back. So 8,600 is fine. The thing I'll say about the center position in general and why I think we're getting Jokic ownership the way it is, it's not great. Like you can play Mobley here,
Yep.
which is obviously a bonus. The mid tier is a lot of muck. I think like there's not a lot to love. Like
I like Jalen Duran, and if
Yeah.
Hartenstein gets ruled out, I think Achua is fine.
Right.
But obviously, Achua's price being $7,100, I do think Duran's in a good spot against the Pacers. You mentioned Mobley's already there. Which Miles Turner shows up to the
Right.
party? 31 minutes in the last 2 games. He's been really good.
Yep.
Can
Making all
we
the
trust
shots.
the minutes though? I don't know. What do you think?
It's for Carlisle. Of course we can.
Can't
Unless it's Halliburton or Siakam, we cannot. I feel like the minutes are just very unstable.
Yep, I agree. Paul Reed.
Nailed it, John. That's the first time in like 6 shows you've gotten Paul
It
Reed
helped by
correct.
clicking on the player card first.
True, that's true.
So I could read the full name. Obviously a great spot for him. If he can stay out of foul trouble, we know what he can give you production wise. Being under 6K makes him a great value on this slate again. And so if you're finding ways to pay up, we've given you 3 guys of $4,600 or cheaper that we're for sure playing. And there are other guys around them that you can plug in as well. And then you got a couple of centers here that we'll touch upon that are under 6K. So there's definitely value on tonight's slate.
Yeah. And I think the Paul Reed thing has been kind of a constant for me. If he's playing against a center that isn't really mobile, or just, I shouldn't say mobile because Bam is obviously very mobile,
Yeah.
but like isn't stretching the floor too much, he doesn't have a problem like really that often. So it's anytime he has to start, he's getting switched out onto perimeter and like having to chase bigs out there is when we start seeing Paul Reed get removed from the floor. So
yeah,
I like him.
My problem Pearl is just the Claxton matchup for him tonight. It's not like my favorite spot for him. You can pivot down to Collins for $100 cheaper. Like I have much more confidence in John Collins tonight than Jakob Poeltl personally, but again, personal preference there for me. Obviously, you have Paul Reed that's there. Nick Richards is still playing almost around 30 minutes a night. So, like, if there is a spot for him, he's not been terrible. The price keeps coming down. 27, 28 fantasy points is 5x there. He can get you there. You were higher on Bagley this morning. I mean, he's been good, but I don't know, against Dallas and the Pelicans, now he's got to deal with Nikola Jokic. So,
and it's interesting to see the ownership there too.
I know.
It's not that I'm surprised by the ownership, really, because, like, Jokic could definitely go out and torch him, and I don't think that would be surprising at all. But, like, Bagley could also give it to Jokic. Jokic isn't exactly, like, the best defender in the world. It's not like we sit there and like, wow, Jokic what a defensive wizard he is, right? Like, he's known for the other side of the floor. So Bagley's nearly a 22% usage rate, just under 1.2 fantasy points per minute, and he's still 5,300. He is the clear alpha in terms of like their center room. Now that he returned, he had the 15 minutes against Philly upon returning, but 28 and 30 even after the acquisition of Rashawn Holmes, back-to-back double doubles. And again, it's another situation. His price didn't move. It's like, even if you get the 28 minutes at 5,300 and he double doubles again, you're like, oh wait, Marvin Bagley had another 30 something fantasy points at 5,300. That was I missed that opportunity again. So like, there's obvious foul risk with Bagley here. Didn't have that exact, like, those types of matchups in New Orleans, even though Valanciunas is a bruiser, but Valanciunas obviously doesn't play all that much, and Dallas, Luka and Kyrie constantly attacking, but stayed out of foul trouble in those games. I like Bagley. I haven't really wavered on that, and it's mostly because if he does stay out of foul trouble, he's a double-double waiting to happen, and he's a big-time fantasy producer as well, 1.2 fantasy points per minute since joining the Wizards.
Sure. Other centers here, just below, just to rattle off a few before we build up a lineup here. Obviously Walker Kessler is still starting and getting the 25 plus minutes here. We know we can get a ton of blocks. Grant Williams is down here. We've talked about that as well. Larry Nance would just be the other one I'd highlight. I mean, In 20 minutes, we've seen him give you around 20 plus fantasy points. He gets a random 30-minute game, gives you 25. There's been games, as you pointed out, where they've started the second half with him over Valanciunas. So I think you can always just throw darts on Larry Nance. He definitely has a role, and we can go in that direction here. Sup, Coach Chris? Yeah, we're definitely a little late to the show about the build lineup, but don't worry. You can watch us on replay, man. Just, start it from the beginning and get us on Twitter, get us in Discord if you guys have any questions. We'll help you all out there. All right, let's get a lineup. I know we're plugging in our 4K plays here with George, with Grant Williams,
Matherin,
and Matherin,
Eddie Math. Let's see, we just got some
probably
updates here.
What do you think? Reed at center?
Yeah, we can go Reed, or if you didn't feel you wanted to play Mobley, you could play Mobley at center as well.
Play Mobley at forward.
Could play Mobley at forward. For sure. Small forward. What do we got at small forward? We could also play
5,800. You go Brandon Miller 7K would give us a 46 util. Can we move anybody else around here?
Yeah, you can move
Matherin is also
Matherin.
small forward.
Yeah,
so could go guard or forward here for around 5,800 a play. Garland is 59. Trey Mann 55.
Yeah, Trey Mann, Sexton, one of those two from that game for sure.
Okay. Is Sexton shooting guard? That probably fits our builds a little
Sexton
bit.
shooting guard only. Yeah, shooting guard only.
Okay, so let's go Sexton. And we'll go Matherin. And we got $5,400 util play. Which is, I mean, if you trust Bagley, he's right there, $5,300.
I'm not. I didn't waver from my morning.
I agree.
My morning take. So,
all right, example lineup for everybody here: Keontae George, Colin Sexton, Ben Matherin, Grant Williams, Paul Reed, Luka Doncic, Evan Mobley, Marvin Bagley. Of course, if you wanted to get off Luka, you'd have more money to play around with. We like Halliburton, we like Brunson. There's definitely some guys down there, Booker, Durant, that you can get, save 2K, and rebuild your lineups around. But you can go get that checked out there. The playbook is live in the Discord. Have any questions, find us there or follow us over on Twitter. We'll be back tomorrow with the pre-show, and then again live at 5 p.m. Eastern time to take you into the weekend. Good luck, everybody, tonight. We'll catch you all later.